Our picks are a dumpster fire, but we're back for another week. Welcome to week 4 of the DPS All Football Talk RodCast for 2024, week 4. Yeah, folks, it's been ugly. I tell you what, Rodney, our AI prediction engine has failed miserably in the first 3 weeks of the season, but it's confirmed what we thought might be the case, and that is if you're not using transfer portal stats and returning production stats, things like that, you might as well just flip a coin in the early weeks because you don't have an edge like you used to have. As I mentioned, Dan DeSetto here, by the way, the DPS, All Football Talk RodCast. And as I mentioned previously, the method we had used to study our AI engine's prediction strength was using only box score data and only trajectory type data from the previous season in the early weeks, and it had worked because a lot of people seem to overreact to news they hear, and teams don't change quite as much as they think they do. That's in the past. Now, teams are changing drastically, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. Teams are definitely having drastic changes from year to year, as opposed to minor changes from year to year. So we've lost our betting edge in the early weeks. Next year, if I don't put something in over the summer next year, that there's a requirement for Rodney, our AI prediction engine, it's a computer that selects picks, has to be concrete data and not guesses. So you can't have anybody's opinion ratings about how teams are going to do in Rodney's selection criteria. It's purely things that a computer can calculate. So we'll try to figure something out over the summer, or we just won't do plays in the first couple weeks. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. It's going to take a lot of work to go in and start putting in player stats and things like that. Return production type of stuff if we try to do that. So we'll see what I decide to do going forward, but definitely we're week 1, 2, and 3 were a bloodbath, a dumpster fire for Rodney's picks, and yeah, it's been bad news. And since I don't put out any play that I don't actually put my own money on, that is something also that I promise as a mission of this RodCast. Not all the plays you see here, unless I say otherwise, all of them, my own money is on those plays. So I'm losing my own money on these poor decisions here in the early parts of the year. So week 4, we got a little bit more data, and I'm going to show you that here in just a second. We're going to go over last week's plays. We're going to go over this week's plays, and we're going to talk a little bit about trajectory, teams that are trending up, teams that are trending down, with the tiny bit of data that we got. So let's start with that. Well, first, before we do that, let's throw up, here are the out-of-conference records for all of the conferences against the power conferences. So this is against the Power 4 and Oregon State and Washington State and Notre Dame, right? So as you can see here, it's not a runaway by any conference, even though the SEC has a lot of the highest quality teams in the country, their bottom end is not anything that's great anymore. So I mentioned last week they're like a souped up Big Ten now, where they've got some really good quality at the top and not much quality at the in the middle and the bottom. So as you can see, SEC does lead the out of conference standings, but they're not running away with it like they've done in past years. And you can also tell from this the ridiculousness of our favorite sport, college football, in the early weeks. Everybody wants to play the MAC. Everybody wants to play the Mountain West. All the power conferences want to play the American Conference. They want to play the MAC. They want to play the Mountain West. They want to play the Sun Belt. And that's why those teams have far more games against the power conferences than the power conferences have against each other. We've had some high-profile power conference games against each other. Few of them, USC, LSU, Texas, Michigan, some high-profile games have happened. Tennessee, NC State, things like that. But we have not had, and I complain about it constantly, a quantity of those type of games. Even at the end of the year, you won't have a quantity of those kind of games. 90% of the teams out there schedule one somewhat difficult Power 5 game, Power 4 game, and the other 3 out-of-conference games are either FCS or just, the lowest of the low of the FBS. So this is what you get. If you keep paying money to see it, they'll keep doing it. So this is what we get in the early weeks. We get a few good games, and, we create some excitement. And we longingly wait for week 4, 5, 6, 7 to come along where we finally get some good action. But it's all within the same conference. The good news about that is the conferences are bigger now, and therefore there's more quality from top to bottom. In the Big Ten now, adding those Pacific Coast teams, you have some more dynamic playmakers coming into the league. And in the SEC, you've got the strength of Texas, the brand of Texas, and the brand of Oklahoma coming into that league. So that's the out of conference so far. That's what we've got so far. Let us talk about the teams that are trending up and trending down. And before I do that, huge caveat, right? So there's 3 things. There's 3 things that are big caveats on when you see this data. Number 1, remember, I only do FBS versus FBS data. You can beat an FCS team 77-3. I don't care. You can pad your stats if you want to. You can run up big numbers. You can even lose those games. San Jose State losing to Sacramento State. You can lose those games even. They're not even showing up in this data, right? So that's number 1. This data doesn't even look at FCS games to tell you who's most improved and who's not. Because of that fact, that's number 2, some teams only have like 1 data point right now. Some teams only have 1 game at this point in the season against FBS competitions. Everybody's got at least 1, but there's a few teams, not a lot, but there's a few teams that only have 1 data point against FBS competition. So you kind of have to throw their rankings out. If they're showing up in these next couple of charts, you kind of have to just take it with a grain of salt. It's very, very early. And the third thing is it's a GSA-related metric that I'm showing you here. Basically what you're seeing is the grades of all the FBS teams, the GSA, our GSA that we use, our GSA metric. In the first 3 games, compared against the last 8 games of last season, and what's your percentage? Are you above? Is your grades, your average grade above what it was last year at the end of the season? Is your average grade below what it was in last season? How are you trending? So you take that for all 134 FBS teams. You figure out their percentages. You rank them. And here are your top 20 trending up teams. And don't forget, I told you, FBS games only. And some teams only have 1 data point. So you gotta have to kind of look at this with a little bit of skepticism there. So here it is, Fresno State, number 1. So again, Louisiana Monroe, only 1 data point on those guys. Northern Illinois had the win against Notre Dame, so you would expect to see them. And what I would like you to notice on this, does this match your eye test of what you've witnessed? Right? So this is purely from box score data. 100% box score data, right? Does it match your eye test that says this team is really much better this year than they've been, right? So you would expect to see somebody like Miami on there. Yep, sure enough, there's Miami, right? You'd expect to see Tennessee, who's looked really good, right? Who beat the hell out of NC State. You'd expect to see them on here. Yep, there they are. Well, there's Michigan State, all right? Michigan State, what an improvement there. Everybody was high on Syracuse coming into the year, that they thought they were going to be up. Syracuse is on the list. Nebraska, they're on the list. How about Baylor? Break out the Baylor Bears. They're on the list early in the season. USC with their win over LSU, they're improving, right? So these are teams. Ole Miss improving. Right, so yeah, this is the fact. How legitimate is what I'm sharing. I take it a little bit with a grain of salt because it's so early. There's so little data, but at the same time, it does sort of match your eye test of what you think. These are some of the most improved teams that we've seen out there, right? Compared to their grading from last year. So, Memphis, that doesn't surprise many people, right, to see Memphis on that list compared to last year. Army only has 1 data point. You can throw them out pretty much. Houston is up and down, but you saw that game against Oklahoma, right, where they darn near could have won that game. So, yeah, this is the most improved teams, the upward trending teams. And the reason I show you this, I'm a recreational bettor, as you guys know. I'm not a professional. I bet only money line, full game money line, and full game against the spread. I don't do over-unders. I don't do first half totals, team totals, things that professional bettors do. The wise guys, so to speak, the wise guys, the wise ladies out there, they use those other tools to help their portfolio. I don't do any of those. I bet like a football fan because that's what I am. I'm a football fan. I don't care who scores more points than or who scores, how many points are scored in a game, put it that way. I don't care how many points are scored in a game. I don't care who scores the most points in the first half, who covers what spread in what half or what quarter, et cetera, et cetera. There's plenty of great podcasts out there if you're looking for that kind of data. I'm a recreational bettor, and for me, I want to see who is improving and look at when I have a bet that I'm going to place or a play that I'm going to do, is someone on this list, right, being bet against or even bet for, how do I feel stronger about it? So that's what this is all about. So there's your most improved teams. And, of course, when you have that, you got the other end of the spectrum, right? So you've got the ones at the bottom going down, right? And so here are the ones that are dropping like a rock. So Purdue, poor Purdue, only has one data point against an FBS team. And they got their butts whipped by Notre Dame last week, 66-3. So you would expect to see Purdue on the list, and there they are, right? Who knows how good they're actually going to be. They maybe just had a bad night, things like that. New Mexico State, really good last year. A lot of people were fading them this year. Sure enough, they show up on the list. And that's another thing I want to say. Kudos to the professional podcasters out there, the ones with sponsors that work hard at looking at rosters and turnover and transfer portal and things like that. They've missed on some early in the season, but mostly they've nailed a lot of these teams that you see on this list, right? A lot, most of them said New Mexico State's going to fall off. Florida State is going to fall off. Boom, there they are. They're 0-3. We didn't expect them to fall off that much, but there they are on the list, right? 0-3. Kent State was already the worst team in the FBS, and they've gotten worse. So UTSA, big fall off, right? They're on the list right there. NC State was nearly an ACC champion level team last year. So far this year, they haven't looked good at all. They did squeak out a win last week. They struggled with Western Carolina in week 1. They got blown off the field in week 3 against Tennessee, 52-10. So they're on the list. SMU, not as good as we expected them to be. A lot of the podcasters were saying when they come into the ACC, they're gonna struggle. So far, that's been the case. Appalachian State, who got throttled by my team Clemson, is on the list. UCLA, a lot of people expected a big fall off when Chip Kelly took his offensive prowess over to Ohio State. And sure enough, Deshaun Foster took over. So far, they've dropped off quite a bit. They're number 17 on the list. And the poor Florida Gators. Yeah, they're number 19 on this list of teams that are falling off. Not surprising to most who have followed what's going on in Florida, in Gainesville. Florida and Florida State dropping off, Miami rising. So there you go. That's your top 20 downtrending teams. According to Rodney's GSA, the percentage change of their overall GSA over the first 3 weeks of the season when compared against the second half of 2023. What's their trend? And that's what we're showing here. I have a lot of friends who are Gamecock fans and Texas Longhorn fans, SEC fans now, right? So I put the SEC in as a special one, and here's what Rodney says. He's going on in the SEC. On the left side of the graphic here is the upward trending teams. On the right side is the downward trending teams. And look at that. Tennessee, number 1 in the SEC, 22% increase in grade when compared against the average of the second half of 2023. You would expect that from Tennessee. Tennessee looks like a real contender to make a deep playoff run. The problem for Tennessee, there's other teams in their conference that are also looking like that, Ole Miss being one of them, right? Ole Miss, problems on defense last year. Tennessee, problems on offense last year. Maybe they fixed them, right? But those teams have higher percentages because they had further to go, right? They had bigger problems than the team that's number 3 on the list. Up 13%, the Texas Longhorns. Boy, you better look out for the Texas Longhorns. A team that nearly made it to the college football playoff final last year is up 13% this year. So that is a dangerous football team, and that's why you saw at the beginning of this RodCast, they are the AP number one team in the country right now. They've supplanted Georgia as the number one team in the country right now. Vanderbilt, South Carolina, big turnaround for them. Once again, they had a long way to go, right? South Carolina was in the 70s in GSA ranking last year, but making positive forward steps. It's good to see them in this list. But in reality, if you want to be a college football playoff type contender, you've got those teams like a South Carolina, like a Vanderbilt, like an Arkansas, like a Kentucky. Good news that you're on the left side of this chart, but you really need to be at the top of this chart and if you want to be a playoff contender, because you have further to go. You need to improve more than someone like Alabama, number 7, right, who's improved 5% compared to where they were last year. Alabama didn't have as far to go, although their offense could use more than 5% improvement. This is an overall ranking, by the way. That's combined offense and defense. So, point is, good news is you're on the left side of the chart. The bad news is you need to be higher on the left side of that chart if you want to be a playoff contender. And that's the same point we can make with Georgia over on the right-hand side of the chart. They're down 5% from where they were last year in the early season data, even with a win against Clemson by 31 points. And, last week's Kentucky game that they squeaked out, they're down 5%. Georgia has further that they can fall and still be a playoff contender. Same for Missouri, right? Teams like Texas A&M, you need to be on the left side of that chart and significantly higher up on that left side of that chart. Rodney's preseason simulation prediction for SEC champion, LSU, doesn't look like they have it, right? LSU 18% down overall in the stats compared to last year, So the fact, the loss of, Jaden Daniels, his, kind of dynamic ability running the football is really kind of a problem for LSU. They really need to have a second quarterback come in and, throw some. They did run the ball well in just pure rushing against South Carolina, and that was the difference in the game, besides maybe some officiating that was questionable. But they did run the ball against South Carolina, and pure rushing, they did well. But they're missing that dynamic element of the quarterback position. And then the two at the bottom, most people predicted it, and sure enough, Mississippi State and Florida were already near the bottom, and they've dropped all the way to the bottom statistically, and we don't know how long until the locker room is lost at these two places right here. So that's your SEC trends, up and down teams for. We'll see, like I said, it's extremely early. We will see if these trends hold throughout the year. We'll come back and revisit that. Hopefully I'll remember to do that, come back and revisit this graphic and see if it is holding once we get into conference play. And also I like to look back at these kind of graphics and say, did they tell us anything that we could have learned going forward in terms of betting strategies and things like that? Did they tell us anything? So that's what this is for. And there you have it. So anything can improve what Rodney did in his dumpster fire of a start. So let's start getting into that. All right, so here's your top 25 matchups from last week. We only had the 2 games last week. First one was no contest, right? Arizona got thumped 31-7 by Kansas State. Rodney was on the wrong side there. Boston College at Missouri. Boston College put up a good fight before Missouri pulled away with a 10-point win. Rodney gets the win there on that one, although neither of these two were DPS plays for the current week. He goes 1-1 on those predictions and is now 3-4 on the year in AP Top 25 matchups. For this week, this coming week, we've got 4 of them, so we got some good action in the top 25. Illinois is a brand new team in the top 25. They're at Nebraska, who is favored by 8. We get our second double asterisk of the year, which is an outright upset prediction by Rodney, saying Illinois is going to beat Nebraska. Now, which is weird because Nebraska, you saw them already on Rodney's list of trending up teams, right? So this is an example where you would say, well, Rodney, you're picking Illinois, but Nebraska is trending up, and I don't think you're ahead of the game on Nebraska. So it'll be interesting to see. That's not a play. I don't recommend you play it either. You do your own pick, but it's interesting. Nebraska is one of his uptrending teams, and yet he's betting against them in week 4. Another one, Michigan is a significant downtrending team this year, although they didn't make the top 20 in the most, they're number 23. The 23rd most downtrending team is the Michigan Wolverines, and they're playing USC. Rodney's still picking Michigan. That's another one. I would say go the other direction, USC. At Michigan, 5.5 point underdog, or 5.5 point road favorites in Michigan, right? 5.5 points. So that means, roughly 8.5 to 9 points that odds makers actually think USC is better than Michigan by 8.5 or 9 points. And in Michigan, 5.5 points. That's significant. The next 2 really good matchups. Utah, Oklahoma State is a very intriguing game. Utah, now in the Big 12. This is now a Big 12 matchup. So could be for one of the playoff, or could be for a playoff spot, actually. Yes, even this early in the season, it could be a decider in the conference championship games and the playoffs. So Utah, Rodney's on Utah, and it's got the green check mark. That means I actually have money on it, on that game as well. Same with Tennessee going into Oklahoma, and I've got money on Tennessee in this one. Tennessee 7-point favorites. Rodney says Tennessee lay the points. Rodney says we will cover the 7 points. We will see how that goes. So that's the top 25 matchups for week 4. Looking forward to a good slate, finally, of some top 25 action. Now let's go back to the negative ledger. ATS plays for last week. Oh, it was ugly, man. I'll tell you. It was ugly. Appalachian State, 2.5 points. They win by 2. They had the ball at the end, and they got a first down when, at the end there and knelt on the ball. Had they not gotten that first down, they might have kicked a field goal to go up by 5. They might have kicked a short field goal to go up by 5 and given the ball back to East Carolina. Instead, they got the first down, and this guy takes the loss thanks to Rodney there. So that's a loss. Appalachian State, East Carolina. Same with West Virginia, Pittsburgh. The backyard brawl was a last-minute loss for Rodney there. He was on the West Virginia side. Pittsburgh goes 3-0, wins late in the game. in the last minute to take the 4-point win there for Pittsburgh. Never really on the right side of the Oregon State. I even mentioned I didn't like that pick at all. Oregon State got dominated by Oregon. Oregon seemed to have their issues resolved, hopefully, for Big Ten play coming up. UCLA, Indiana is a tale of teams going two different directions. Indiana, you saw them on the list of trending up teams. UCLA, you saw them on the list of trending down teams. And those two vectors collided. Indiana blows out UCLA. And Indiana, things are looking good in Indiana. Same with Minnesota and Nevada, although both of these teams were on the trending up slide. Minnesota takes the win there. The only win we got in the ATS was a Thursday night matchup, Arizona State, Texas State. Texas State put up a great fight in that game before finally, losing by 7 there at the end. Or no, was it 3? Might have been 3. It was a Thursday night game. So Arizona State takes the win there, and we are saved from the 0-7 embarrassment on our ATS plays. Jacksonville State was yet another last-minute loss. So 3 last-minute games that went the wrong direction for Rodney this week. Just a brutal week for us. Jacksonville State had it and blew it there right at the end. So, wow, look at that. 8-17 on plays through week 3. It is a bloodbath for my account. I do all my betting over at a place called MyBookie, and it is a bloodbath over there. I tell you what, you can see for the week down 5.09 units for the week. Ouch. Woo. And for the year now, down 7.87. Only 3 weeks into the season, and we're already down almost 8 units. That's going to be difficult to climb out of, just like last year. So that's going to be a very difficult thing to overcome. But we will still give you the plays every week and see how it goes, see if we can climb out of it. This is what we did on the money line. A loser for the first time in the money line. We were down a unit here. The only winner we had was UCF with the last second win over TCU. We got the plus 100 there. That game was kind of going both directions all week long, and wound up, when I bet it, it was in UCF as an underdog. I always bet on, these are always underdogs that I'm betting here, and it was only a plus 100. But we got the win there. Miami, Ohio was somewhat close against Cincinnati. North Texas, not even close. They got blown out. So for the year, 5-4, up 2.44 units, thankfully, on money line plays. Lost the parlay, of course, the 3-team parlay. Here's the summary. Here's the ugly truth. The 8-17 in ATS, down 5 units last week. And the 1-2 on the money line, down a unit there. So for the whole year, 7.87 units down for the year. Not a good start for Mr. Rodney over there. There we go. So that's that. That is what we got. So, all right, here we go with Week 4's DPS plays. Let's start out with the ATS, where we're doing terrible, as we said. 8-17 so far on the year. Let's hope for better things. Here we go. You already know 2 of them. Tennessee, -7 against Oklahoma. Utah, -2 against Oklahoma State. I think Tennessee might have gone up to 8 since I made my capture this morning, but my bet is -7. I didn't have to take the 8 there. A lot of money going on Tennessee, apparently. But so that's those two plays. Then we've got Tulsa plus 3.5 against Louisiana Tech. This is a tough game right here. Michigan State, Boston College. Michigan State going to cover that 7. Baylor against Colorado. Boy, I have lost a lot of money on Colorado trying to figure out which week it is they're up and which week it is they're down. And they'll probably be up this week. Who knows? But Baylor plus 2. Baylor was on our list of most improved teams. NC State, even though they're on our list of most trending downward teams, NC State, it's a conference game against Clemson. And we are thinking, Rodney is thinking that NC State is going to come through and cover that 20.5 point spread. I have a ton of plays in ranges that are winners in previous years that I can pick from, and I picked that game because it's my alma mater. I picked that as one of my plays because it's my alma mater, because if I win the bet, at least I won the bet, and if I lose, that means my Tigers won by 21 points, and I'm happy. I'd be happy to lose that bet. So I chose that game because of that. It's in a range of winning results for the previous 3 years, but it's also one of those, pick it so that you have a good week either way on your alma mater. So Arkansas State, somehow Rodney thinks they can cover 21.5 against Iowa State. I'm not so certain about that. That's the ATS DPS plays for week number 4. And the money line plays, as we mentioned, 1 and 2 last week. I don't like any of these plays because a lot of these teams are on the negative trajectory list, and that's why the odds are so high, right? We got huge odds this week. So my $10 parlay, I can make a lot of money off my $10 parlay if all 3 of these hit. I wouldn't be surprised if I go 0-3 this week, but New Mexico State against Sam Houston is a plus 570. That is the biggest underdog of the week, 21 points, something like that. Ball State is terrible. They're number 1. They got beat 62-0 last week to Miami. And somehow Rodney's got it picked to beat outright Central Michigan plus 195. San Jose State against Washington State, who coming off their huge upset win last week in the Apple Cup, the September Apple Cup, before the apples are even ripe yet, plus 400 on that one. San Jose State looks like an awful team. They've already lost to Sacramento State. They look just awful, and somehow Rodney thinks they're going to win against a really improving Washington State team. Don't ask me. These are the plays that he put out there, and I like to select, again, I have a lot of games to choose from, and I use a couple criteria to choose the ones that I'm going to actually parlay and make plays against. And one of the criteria is I like to have at least one that's the highest odds of the week, no matter how close Rodney thinks the game's going to be. And then the other 2 are like ones that Rodney has the most disparity with Vegas on. Said he had a lot of disparity on that game, plus 400. We'll see. We'll see if Rodney knows what he's talking about. Who knows? But positive money so far. We're hoping for continued positive money so that we don't go drop into the abyss on these ATS plays. 3-dog parlay plays are 0-3. Not surprising. They're difficult to hit. 3 underdog parlays are tough to hit. So and are lucrative if they do hit. I don't remember what this week's parlay pays out if it hits, but it's a big one. So if I get lucky this week, it can solve some of my issues I'm having with the other bets, but I think it's highly unlikely. So that is the DPS RodCast for week number 4. Thank you all, as always, for subscribing, for liking, commenting. Send me some comments. Send me some discourse. Let's talk. So let's talk about things you disagree with or things you want to know about. Hit that like button. Thank you guys. It can help me a lot. I don't ask for money, and I don't ask to have sponsors, so I can say whatever I want on here. And I am attempting to win you guys some money. So far, it hasn't worked out. We're gonna keep shooting at the target and see if we can hit it. Right now, we've been pretty much stormtroopers trying to shoot right now. We will see you next week. This is Dan DeSetto for the DPS All Football Talk RodCast.